Spirecraft, and this is Spirecraft Live. Sorry I missed last week, but I'm here today, bells and whistles ready to roll. I got the AC on. Hey Joe, good afternoon. I got the AC on, the fan blowing, because it's 85 degrees outside. Now, I know you guys that are up north, like Joe, it is not 85 degrees, I don't think. I've been watching the news, and apparently there's a big old snowstorm up north. Hey, Brian, good to see you. But yeah, so I got all hot and sweaty running around today. Rich Bradley, yes, you're. So, Rich, last week you were on time and I wasn't here. Funny how that works, but hey, you know, yeah, no snow there either. You got to be at least as warm as I am. I'm, like I said, I was saying I'm 85 out there, and I was out running the chainsaw just a little while ago, and I thought, can I have winter back? You know, 50 would be nice. So all of a sudden it's springtime. At least I am slowly getting over the crud, flu, cold, virus, allergies, whatever I've been having. It's been killing me for weeks. I take all kinds of stuff now, and at least I can breathe, and hopefully I don't drool or snort or snizzle or anything else today while we're playing here. 70 in Panhandle. Oh, it's nicer down there then. Yeah, 83. You guys, that's true. You're on the coast. You get the ocean breeze. Hello, Michael. Thanks for popping in. Good to see you. I am ready to go today with chasing threads. I've caught a few. I've been chasing them for weeks, and I have caught a few. Hand chasing threads in wood and resin is quite an interesting aspect of wood turning or project making, shall we say. It's been a real eye-opener. It's something I had never done until recently. And what I'm working with today is the Carter & Son Toolworks Mike Mahoney thread chaser. This happens to be the 12 TPI. I'll pop you in the overhead real quick. He says, and I've got it zoomed in real tight because on the piece of wood, it's got the outside threads on one end and then the inside on the other. Okay, and this is a design that Mike came up with for them. Now, there's lots of different thread chasing tools out there. I've been looking at a lot of stuff here in the last few weeks, preparing to go here with this, and this is the first one this is the only one that I've seen. Doesn't mean it's the only one that there is like that. Most of them use two tools, the chaser and the arm rest, or tool rest as they call it, I believe it is, and they have one tool that cuts the threads and another tool that you pull with. So this is a singular tool method, which is pretty cool. I have not tried the other methods. Just learning this one has been quite the challenge, and it's actually been really fun. But it is a learning process, and it's a process that I am still learning. So let me take a look down here and see what's going on. -20 and cloudy here right now. Oh, but that's Celsius. Okay, -2 and cloudy. Gotcha. It's a little bit warmer here. So this thread chasing is one of those mystery kind of black art things when you hear about it. I've visited quite a few videos in the last few weeks, online like anybody else would, to see the different styles and the different approaches and what factors seem to come up the most, seem to be the most important. And everybody, of course, has a little bit of different approach to it. And some of the things that I found show just parts, and some are more inclusive. And I will say, I do believe if you want to watch a video, even though it's using a different style tool, to get the most in-depth insight into thread chasing, it's the Alan Batty one that Craft Supplies made years ago. He's very thorough, and he explains it very well, and lets you understand that it does take quite a while to get a handle on it. Joe, I've done both methods. It's a bit of getting the knack thing. Yeah, there's a whole lot of that to it. And there's a lot of variables. I think that's one of the biggest things I found. There's a lot of variables in the wood or the material. There's a lot of variables in the thread pitch tool that you're using. And then again, things like your tool rest needs to be super clean and super smooth and super polished. And as you get into this, and if you start watching, the more videos you watch, you'll see people talking about it, hear people talking about this motion. And the motion has to do with engaging the tool. And everybody talks about it, for the most part, as kind of a circular motion. And it really is, the only way to describe it is to say it's kind of one of those, you got to hold your tongue just right, and you have to practice a lot. And you'll make a lot of mistakes. And when I first started playing with this, I thought I was doing things right and nothing was working. So I went back and started looking again and going back through what I was doing compared to what people were showing, and especially the Alan Batty video. And then I read a few articles. Believe it or not, I actually sat down and read some stuff. So there's a lot of information out there, and my biggest recommendation would be go check a lot of it out because it varies. I am no master whatsoever. I've been doing this for a couple of weeks now. Spirecraft carries the tool, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go ahead and learn how to do it, and it's something I've always wanted to learn. It's kind of like carving. You have to make the time to get to it. And Joe says just starting with 16 TPI, 250 to 300. Yes, so Joe makes a great point there at 250, 300. Speed is very important. It's one of the most important factors relative to the TPI, the threads per inch. So the fewer threads per inch, the faster you have to move the tool. Mike Mahoney refers to it as the dance as you move the tool, and as you move the tool across the wood. The fewer teeth, the fewer threads per inch, the faster you have to move the tool to keep up with the cutting process. The more threads per inch, the slower, because they're smaller threads, so the pitch is, I think that would be the right word to use, the pitch is tighter, if you will. So the tool is going to move slower as it cuts the threads. And that was one of the things that was a big eye-opener for me, reading an article a fellow talked about. He did it just by turning his lathe by hand. And I have not tried turning by hand, just spinning it over. He was on like a treadle lathe. And so when I started, I'll tell you the first mistake I made is I had the lathe running too fast. So my brain, as a bowl turner, has always been, more speed is your friend, so on and so forth. Well, when you're working on a project that you're threading, you have to change the speed a lot because you need to speed up the lathe to turn the piece, to carve out the hole, to make the shape, etc. But then you have to switch gears and slow everything way down and be patient. As Alan Batty says, it's really a patience type of process. Rich, you had lunch with Joe B. last week. Okay, good deal. You guys are just chatting amongst yourself. So anyway, the other thing is material, wood. What kind of wood? And it turns out, apparently, and I'm going to try and skirt around this and show you another option. We'll see what happens. Is the wood, the material itself. It takes a unique wood, a special wood. The one you'll hear the most is boxwood. Boxwood threads great. And it's not, and I don't have the Latin name in my head, it's not the boxwood like you have in your shrubs out there in the front yard. It's a tree that grows in Europe and I believe North Africa for the most part. And somebody can correct me on that. But it's a boxwood tree. And then other exotics, and here's where I lack, being a domestic wood bowl turner. I don't buy exotics. They're expensive. And I did price a piece of boxwood the other day just to see what it would cost to be making inserts. I believe it wasn't Brian, it was Hans, I think. And Hans isn't in here yet. Asked me about showing how you could make a threaded ring and a plug so that you could insert it into other pieces out of boxwood. And I ended up at the exotic lumber store, something like that. And a piece of, say, 2x2 or 3x3, 28-inch long boxwood was $117, which is, in my mind, crazy. You know, I pay $100 for a ton of wood in the log yard. So, you know, I probably never go out and buy boxwood. And most of our woods that we have here in the U.S. don't take threads very well. And so when I was first trying, I had heard you need a hard, dense wood. I went over to my woodshed over here, and I said, okay, like a piece of maple. I found the hardest, most dense piece of maple I could find. I had horrible success. Horrible. Right? Just didn't work at all. Now, I was also at the beginning of it all. So then I learned more and more as I went, and I practiced, and I slowed down. And then I started playing with the resin, because I wanted to see, because I love the resin. And then I had a thought, and we're going to play with this today. So if we can't get inexpensive wood here in the U.S., domestically, so to speak, what happens if we take our regular woods that we have and we stabilize them? All right? Now, I don't know, you may hear my vacuum pump running. I'm stabilizing a bunch of little boxes that I started on a few days ago, and I discovered I had a tear in the seal on my vacuum chamber. But I have a few pieces that they came out of the oven half an hour ago, and they're sitting here cooling off. And when I threw them in the oven this morning, I couldn't find the rack, and so they got some gunk on them. But I want to try, so most of them are maple, the same maple that wasn't working for me. I stabilized them to the best of I could with the leaky gasket, and then I cooked them. So I want to see if we can take and stabilize our domestic woods and make them suitable for threading. Then we don't have to buy expensive woods. That's my goal with that part of the project, is to see if that works. And this stuff is still setting up. I mean, it was hot. You know, it was 200 degrees when I carried it in here. And so it's cooling down, and there's some scooge on it, if you will, that's starting to finally set up. Joe says, for domestic wood, I have decent success with hard maple. And good, that's great, Joe. And the maple I have isn't that hard. And I don't know about the age of it and things like that. But the other wood that I do have, and I have on the lathe right now, it's not in very good shape. I read about dogwood. And dogwood is a wood they used to use to make shuttle looms and different parts for the sewing industry when we still made garments and threads and stuff here in the United States. And it talked about dogwood. It's super hard, super wear resistant. Well, I had a dogwood cut down. It's laying out here in the yard, and it was dead. That's why I had it cut down. And that's what's on the lathe right now. This is a piece of dogwood. Now, the bugs have had a field day with the log, but it did thread relatively well. Do they make dogs with it? Yeah, they do make dogs with it. And you don't find dogwood very big very often, except for if you're Nick Agar. Somehow, I was over in Brooklyn at Chromacraft, and Nick's shop is right there, and they had found, they know a tree surgeon, it had a dogwood that was like this big around. It was huge. So this dogwood I experimented with, and I've got another piece of it here. It's green, and it's bug eaten, but I just wanted to try it, and it does thread pretty well. You can find some fancy wood to send to me. You may hate me afterwards, though. Yeah, well, send it on. I'm too cheap to buy expensive wood. Because I'm not a pen turner, and usually the fancy exotics you buy into smaller quantities, I believe. You go out and buy 16-inch bowl blanks out of something exotic is going to cost a ton, and I'm too cheap when I can go to the log yard and pay, $100 a ton. Well, I used to pay $45, then I paid $60. It's probably $100 now for a ton of wood. Anyway, so let's kind of get playing, and I also have, you saw the picture the other day I have this piece of resin, and I'm going to pop back into 4 here. And I have had, to date, so far, good luck threading resin. And like you said, you guys know I'm a resin fan. So I've got a couple extra pieces of resin here. I was going to cast some up just for this, and then I didn't get to it. The phone rang, and I had to do other stuff. But let's get started playing. And what I'll do, I think I'll use this piece of dogwood to start. I want to let that other stuff keep cooling off for a while. So I think I'll turn the threads away on this piece of dogwood and go through the initial process, talk about what I've learned to do the threading on this. Not really to make it a project so much, but just the basics of threading the piece of wood. I will do my best to keep an eye on the chat column to look for any questions. If I don't answer it, and if you see your question scroll by and no longer in my view because I don't go over and change it, don't hesitate to ask it again because I might miss it. It's kind of hard for me to read over there. But that's what I'm going to do. So I think we'll start with that. We'll turn the threads away on this, and we'll do it again. And I'll set you in the overhead and the end camera in the overlay, and we'll leave it at that. You can't see anything this far away. So let me set that up. We set up the overhead as the main, and we'll overlay the end shot. And the end camera is the one that's still got the jiggles, which is going to have to go to the shop or become the front camera. Sorry, I had to have a little sip there and a little bit of ice. So I'm just going to turn these threads off of here. I'm not going to tell you walnut doesn't take a thread well. Absolutely not. I'm not going to tell you that. I haven't tried it. I don't know. You're welcome to try it and let me know what you find. You know, one would think that it would. And in my reading, I may have seen that walnut will. And again, every little tree is different. Well, Brian, I've got some sycamore here, as a matter of fact. It's in the stabilizing department now. And the sycamore, it did so-so. Again, it depends on the age and the quality of the wood and so on. Find a place to hang this. I'll just keep it right down here. That should be out of the way. All right, and I was turning that away at like 700. Now you see the little line here, the depth back here. That's important, and it's over exaggerated at the moment. Then I'll just turn this off. So this will be a set of male threads, and you need to have space behind it, both on the male and the female, so that the tool can move by and not catch that. But also that on the male threads helps work as a witness mark, but in reverse. And if I go to get far enough along today to make a project, you'll see that we use this intersection here to measure our female part, and it's sticking out the other end. And when your threads start to touch that, you know that they're far enough along. So the first thing that you have to do, so you got this, they need to be parallel, and that's one of the harder things. And I'm looking at this, and it's not quite parallel yet. That's one of the things to keep in mind. Is to have the sides parallel on both, otherwise things just don't work. So I'll clean this up, straighten this up a little bit more, and I was just eyeballing it. I'm trying not to do anything to look over, put my head in the way too much. I'm trying to look up at the monitor there. Okay. A taper will just give you a headache. I mean, it won't work for you. So I'm going to take this down to 250. Okay. And even at 250, I've got a round tool rest. It's small. We have our surface for the threads. Joe says walnut is not great, but especially if quarter sawn, water thin CA helps stiffen the fibers, but changes the wood oat color a bit. Yeah, and that's the thing. Any wood can be stiffened up, and the question is just how well is it going to work. So the first step is a little bit of a chamfer on the end here to give your tool somewhere to start. Now, the question I haven't come to the full answer yet is how big is a little chamfer, right? Is it 1/8 of an inch? Is it 1/4 of an inch? I'm making them smaller as I go. Now the tool, you can see I'll get it up here past the overlay. It's got just one side is sharpened. The bottom side is flat. The top side has the bevel on it. And you only resharpen the top, the bevel side, and the bevel side is up. And when you first start, I'm going to lower that tool rest just a fuzz. K-Deluxe order off to shipping. By the way, K-Deluxe is one of the top 10 densest woods in the world and sinks. Rich, you the man. You the man. That's as far as I can go with the banjo. When we start, and it's referred to as striking a thread, and we don't start with the edge, we start with the center. And this is where the circular motion, you just start with the circular motion. And and I'm going to refer to Alan Batty here a lot because I got the most from him. He talks about just kissing the wood. And then once it starts to cut the first thread, you can start to engage it. And you have to find just the right angle. And once it starts, the tool will follow. In the thread. Now this has a little bump in it. There's something weird in the wood. And those little fibers you see coming off there, that is an indication of a good clean cut with your tool. Okay? Now again, this is green boxwood, right? It's not dry. I mean, I literally cut this an hour ago. Okay? Now it doesn't tear out badly. And if you don't have extra room here to the left of the threads, when you come to a stop, it will just cut all your threads off. So that's one of the important things. That's why you have the extra room. And this is the basis of the process. This is just the basics. Now, when you get to working on a project and you go to put a lid on here, or put the cap on when you're trying to mate your two pieces, and I want to show you that I learned this. If it doesn't fit, it can be too big, and you need to relieve, is the term used, relieve the threads a little bit, right? So what does that really mean? Well, it means that we just cut them back down, because you would be fine-tuning to the mating piece, okay, and just take a little bit off to begin to adjust. And then come back in and recut the threads. So if you find that you're too tight, and I'm doing that so you can see it easily here on this plate piece. Okay? And that's the basic premise for chasing the thread. All right? So a little chamfer on the end that gets you started, a little relief room here on the back side so that your tool doesn't come up against something hard and stop, because when it comes in and stop, it'll sit there and cut, it'll just straighten the threads out or cut them right off. Okay? So that's the basic movement. And that circular motion when you start is very important. And the speed of moving, again, this is moving at 250. And as long as you keep up, if you don't keep up with the rate of feed, you'll cut your threads off, okay? Also helps if you have the tool up the right side up. But you have to keep up with that rate. So if this was turning 300, let's turn it up to 300, 325. I have to move the tool a lot faster now across to keep up. Now here's where I think one of the big variables comes in. If the tool isn't cutting well enough and you speed it up, you get a cleaner cut, is what we're taught in everything else. So there's this fine line of how fast for the quality of cut and how well can you keep up with that speed, that rotational speed for the feeding of the tool. And I believe, and I'm not 100% on this, but I do believe that the faster you can turn the piece, the better it's going to cut, as long as you can indeed keep up with the feed rate. Okay, does that make sense? So that's one of the big things that I've come to, is keeping up with the feed rate. And so I had to move along pretty good there, but when I did, I got a cleaner thread cut there. Okay, and that's out of a green piece of wood, dogwood. So I think that's really important, that ratio of speed to movement of the tool to the cutting quality. So 3 different variables right there. Okay? All right. So that's the basics of it. So let's play. That's in a piece of dogwood. All right. Now and it's green. Let's try. I don't really have like a project per se lined up here today. I just want to go through the process of showing you cutting the inside and outside threads the best that we can. So while that continues to cool, I'm going to take a piece of resin. Now this piece of resin, this is going to be interesting. This guy is a combination. This is a hybrid. This is resin and some piece of wood. And I don't believe the piece of wood was stabilized. All right, so I thought I'd experiment and see what happens in a hybrid that's not stabilized. I know the resin will cut. I'm curious with the wood, and we're going to have them next to each other. So it's going to be like an A-B comparison in one piece of material. All right? And I'll have to turn it down a little bit. And I see if I'm going to try not to have to change jaws here. I might have to change jaws to get this in here. No, I can make that work. This is just a little something from Resin Day back in the past. And we'll move this over just a fuzz. Just enough to keep it all in the shot. This is nothing of special. When I finish a resin project, I just use up the old resin. So let's just kind of turn this flat. We're going to experiment here. I happen to have, oh, that is not a negative rake. Let me grab a negative rake carbide cutter. And did y'all see that the new Easy Wood negative rake beading cutters came out yesterday? They're now available. Mine are coming today. They're coming in, or I would show them to you right now. They're coming UPS. So let's flatten this guy out a little bit. Take that off of there. Let's see what we've got, what kind of material we have combination wise. So we have wood and resin and a chip. It chipped right there. So let's take that down a little bit more. I may end up with all wood here in the middle. Alright, so it's about half resin and half unknown. I'm going to probably say it's poplar, but God only knows what it actually is. Coming from my storeroom. And I'm just going to square that up a little bit more. Put our chamfer on the end. And I'm going to make a recess with the point tool, detail tool, just give myself a little room back there. Okay. Pop back down to 250. So half wood, half resin. This is a weird one. Our little motion going. Now that little divot in there doesn't help things any. Be curious to see if there's a difference between the whatever this wood is. I have no earthly idea, and the resin. So the resin definitely cuts a much nicer thread. The wood is cutting a thread, but it's chipped out. Again, I don't know. It's something soft. Okay. So that was an experiment there. I forgot about that, having the wood in it. All right, now let's take one of my pieces of stabilized. It's probably maple. The stabilizing resin is violet that's in the tank in here, so it doesn't look like maple. It's violet maple. We'll clean this guy up, get the gunge off of it. And this, yeah, I know this is maple, and this maple the other day, it really wouldn't take threads worth a flip, so to speak. So we'll see how it does now being stabilized. I hope my idea works, that stabilizing our domestic soft / hardwoods makes any wood usable to us. That's what I'm after in this part of the process. Move that back into the camera a little bit more. Speed back up. I love this Nova Nebula. Just change the speeds and off you go. Flatten it out. Make yourself a little extra room. Back on the back side. Okay, there's a little split in there, but I don't think that's going to hurt anything. Make sure it's a little more parallel. Put our chamfer on there. Infamous chamfer. Okay. Speed back down to 250. So, stabilized maple. Get ready, get your dance warmed up. You can see the tool just barely, it's just kind of barely in the shot because this piece is bigger. Get that first thread started. So this is night and day difference than what it was the other day. Maybe not perfect. I'm getting some decent shavings. It's cutting much better. It's also pretty violet. Okay? So that gives me hope that we can work with our woods that otherwise wouldn't thread. And if you're into stabilizing, or if you just want to buy some stabilized wood for it's less expensive, a little lump in there of some kind. So it's interesting. It looks like here in the purple or the violet, I'm getting much better threads than here. It's like I didn't get full penetration. And again, this was not under perfect vacuum. I was having trouble with the vacuum. I found out that I had rotated the lid and probably sliced the seal, which is now up, the slice is up top. So I didn't get penetration into this section of the wood. And it doesn't cut nearly as cleanly as it does over here. I'm getting great threads where this is nice and violet and has been stabilized really well. So that's the thing. So the stabilizing has to be done well. And you can see here on the end, we've got good color penetration, good resin penetration here, and not here in the light color. Okay. So that would be a fail, but only in my stabilizing, that I did not get penetration all the way into that piece of wood for whatever reason. Okay. So that makes me really happy about that. Okay. All right, so let's see what we got here now. We know that works. I'm going to try another piece that looks like it might be stabilized all the way through. And then we'll go for making the two parts. We'll make it one fit the other. We'll work on that. So if I find two pieces here, so that one would be, in theory, the lid, and one would be the body. We'll go through the whole process. All right, so I'm going to clean these up. I've got two pieces here. You can see. And they're both maple. These are boxes, lidded boxes, just pieces and parts, random pieces and parts that I had laying around. If you flip the tool over, will it cut left-hand threads? I don't think so. You would have to work right to left or left to right. It's a good question, Micah. But I think you would have to have a reverse tap. And that's another thing. You can tap, I'm not going to pull the camera up. You can tap really, really small stuff with standard taps and dies for projects. Again, I encourage you to watch the Alan Batty one. He shows you he's got a little teeny finial on a piece. And it's pretty cool. And he did it with a regular tap and die. So I'm just cleaning up this, and this is going to be, I believe, we'll use it as the body. And the other one, when you do a project, you want to go ahead and make the lid first, and then fit the body to the lid. Since this is stabilized, the negative rake works much better. The beauty of stabilized wood, of course, is it's wood plus resin. So it's kind of a man-made thing. Yes, correct, Micah, or Michael McEwen to Kirk. I am using the Carter & Son Toolworks, and boy, I'm going to have to change chuck jaws here for just a minute. And it'll probably be too big for one and too small for the other. But I need to clean that up. So, yes, it's the Carter & Son, and this is the 12 TPI. So here we'll give a quick plug to the Easy Chuck with the quick change jaws. The question is, will this funny little piece fit? It's too big for the 1 3/8, and will it fit in the 2 3/8? Or will I have to do something different to hold it and clean it up? Yes, this is going to work. All right. So I'll clean this up so that I can turn it around and put it back in the other jaws. You see it got some foil stuck to it. I was looking for all my other resin pieces, and since I took the studio completely apart when I redid it, I have no idea where so many of my extra pieces that I had stored around in here have gone to. Fix up our little tin in there. Okie dokie. Back to a quick jaw change. When I'm on the road doing demonstrations, which of course got shut down this year, I do love this Easy Chuck. When I'm demonstrating in the public, I only have to take one chuck and I can change jaws. I got 5 jaws to work with. I don't have to carry a bunch of chucks on the road with me. Here in the studio, well, and in the shop, you know, I've got a bunch of chucks and I probably don't change jaws. But it really is nice for that. All right, we'll clean this guy up. And we'll go and make the inside threads. And we'll talk about all that procedure. Now, you do want the insides to be parallel, and if my inside spring calipers are around here anywhere at all close and handy, I didn't think about that at the time. I don't see them, so we'll have to hope and pray. So we're going to be working inside, so let's switch things around. All right. One thing that's important is that back inside here we need a groove. When we cut our threads, we need to have a relief groove cut back here so that the tool doesn't come to a stop and hit that and rip the threads out. Okay? So if you have a hook style tool, you can do that. Like I think I'll just use, I've got a negative rate cutter on a big easy wood tool here. And so I'm just going to come in here and cut myself a relief. So that as I cut the threads, the tool doesn't hit there. And also in this tool, they've put this little curve right here so that as you're making the threads, it can go in that little curve. And I'll see if I can show you better here. So as the tool goes in, it doesn't strike the tool as you're cutting. Oop, here it is. Wrong one. And as you're striking the tool, it's got that curve, so it's got room. All right. Okay, so we're going to pray that that's parallel because I don't know where my calipers are at the moment. But I made a little recess back in here. And I'll probably make that a little bit longer real quick. Give myself a little more room to work. Okay. Are we having fun yet? I am. Now I need a chamfer here on the inside just like we did on the outside. So we'll give ourselves a little chamfer. Okay. And I'm going to double check that this is not too... Okay, so I still... Go away, bug. I still have enough material that I can cut this piece down. All right. After I make my threads. Not a lot. It'll be close after I make the threads. I'm going to have a little sip of water here real quick, guys. All right, back down to 250 from my speed. My dance, I start at an angle. Now they're harder because you can't see them. You're kind of working blind. You can just see the other side. Getting nice shavings coming off. Let's stop and take a look and see how that looks in there. I got my air compressor here too. Blow that out. Okay. That looks like a pretty good start. Again, so I had a little, because I wasn't watching, I couldn't watch and see. It took me a minute to get my stride, if you will, with the movement of the tool, the pace across the threads. Again, nice shavings because the wood is now hard because we stabilized it. Okay, so we're going to assume that that's a reasonable set of threads, all right? The next step is we're going to fit our body to our threads there. So now we're going to take the cap off. We're going to assume these threads are good. We're going to hope. And we're going to turn this around, and we're going to turn the body down to where it just goes inside the threads. Okay? And that's going to give us a gauge. So we'll keep that up on top of the lathe. We pop this guy in here. Doesn't have the best tendon in the world, but he's got a flange. We'll clean him up a little bit. Just a slight bit, because we don't want to take any more off that outside, but we need it true. We'll jump back up to 1020, 1020 RPMs. And I just want to make it true. I don't want to take... If I make it too small, I have to go look for another piece. Okay? A little bit of a flat right there. Let's see if I still have room. Okay, so I still have some room to go. So I'm safe. So this is my guide for cutting the threads up here, okay? And this will eventually get turned away. Okay, so hopefully I didn't go too far. My threads might be a little bit baggy, okay? Because now this drops right over. All right. So now that I have this is my gauge. I take this down to the thread depth. All right. Now again, this is a pretty short piece. I get that, and I want to make sure that it's parallel. It's a little funny working with this carbide, this radius negative rate cutter. We'll fudge it a little bit there. And then I'll take, if I have one mounted up here, do I have a really small CI5NR on anything? I do, but that's in a curve. Let's see. Where might they have gone? Well, we'll just use a parting tool. When you can't find the right tool, find a good substitute. So this is my relief cut. Well, you mean as far as my gauge? Yeah, I would have liked a little firmer fit, but I went just a fuzz too far. And oh well, so to speak. So this fit right here should have been a little snugger. There's a little play. All right, now up here is where we're going to cut our threads. We're coming up against that shoulder, and it's kind of got a chamfer to it already. All right. Now this will be fun because I haven't actually made many actually fit. I've made part A and part B, but not many combined units. I love the challenge of having to do things live. So I'm back to my straight tool now, and I'll invert the cameras. Take a quick look at it, see how it looks. A little bit more to go. And this is where, remember I talked about easing the threads if it's too big, and if it's too small, well then I get to start over. And see, if I let this tool hit right here, while it's still in the threads, it will take the threads right off of there. So I also, if you remember, I mentioned about a witness mark out here. So what I'm waiting to see is when the thread chaser starts to cut out on my gauge area, right? Now my gauge is a little small, so I probably am not going to go that far. But you would look for a thread to start to show up out here if I hadn't quite overcut that so much. And this is pretty deep, so I might be able to slide that on there. Okay, so it starts, but it's a little tight. So what I will do is I'll go ahead and take this off now. And I'll jump back up to turning speed for that. Because we've cut our threads and now we just have to adjust. And provided that I don't cut the threads away, make a mistake while I'm adjusting, okay. So this is where I referred to easing this. So I'm going to actually cut these threads down now. Back to my 250. I'll cut them down at 250. Just take some of it away because they're a little too tall, right? But don't cut the whole thread away. Okay, and you want to creep up on this stuff. Okay, so I feel like I have a little taper that I'm actually, and I can see it, that I'm bigger back here on the back side. If I brush this away, you might be able to see it's not truly parallel. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just rotate the cutter, the tool, when I'm back here, take a little more away, back in the back. Making sure not to touch here, because if I hit that flange with this corner of the tool, I take the threads off. So my first two are good, then I'm tight after that still. If I have to ease them again, I will. But I'm hoping that I can just do it by taking them out of the back. Not quite there yet. This is, like he said, you have to just take your time and be patient. And slowly sneak up on it. Hopefully, before I run out of time, I will get this cut. It's 2:08. Okay. And they haven't been waxed yet or anything like that. That also helps. But this is still too tight. And I may have to take the tops off again. Now that I have a pretty good peak there, I get a little chunk of something there. Okay, those are really nice threads. There we go. Okay. So you just keep working at it, and now they would need to be oiled up, waxed up. Now the threads on the inside are not cut as well as these are. These are much cleaner, much more defined than I did on the inside. I did an okay job on the inside, but not a great job. And then if you want to adjust, depending on what the case is, so in this case, we don't come all the way up, right? And I'm guessing that I'm probably bottoming out inside there, even though it doesn't look like I would. If you need to adjust, you do want to take away from here, cutting into a thread from the cap, according to Mr. Alan Batty. And I'm still trying to get my head around the difference between cutting into a thread on this end and cutting into this end. But he was very adamant about that. Okay. And let's see something here. We're going to do a little measuring out of curiosity's sake. So it's probably that my threads are not quite clean enough because I have plenty of room, I have plenty of depth. And that back thread in here may not be cut all the way through. And it's also, like I say, it's a little loose, so the threads may be, I'm thinking that threads may be actually binding on themselves if this thread wasn't cut here in the cap as well. Okay. If I had some wax in here, or something, a little lubricant, I'm just curious here what happens. There we go. So they're just not perfect is all. They're not perfect threads. A little lubricant on there made a big help. That's just some machine lube, some dry machine lube that I sprayed on here. But you can see it made a big difference. You can wax them and with a toothbrush and get some wax in there. So there we go. So just a little more tuning and adjusting, and it would be, you know, a nice, perfect fit. I probably should go back in and recut this one. But that's it. That is the basis for thread chasing and fitting. Again, the important thing here was that we made a little spigot measuring gauge, if you will, that stuck out. Now, my mistake on this one was that I made it just a little bit small, and I had to work these threads harder and harder down. I had to relieve them until I finally got where I needed to be. Okay? And looking at these inside threads in the cap here, when I look close, they're not nearly as nice. They're kind of got flats on the top still. So I probably could go in here, although the problem is they're a little loose as it is because I overcut that. And they don't have real nice sharp points. So that, I'm really happy. I'm going to take another quick sip before I change cameras here. To me, a big takeaway from this, what we just did with the stabilized wood, tells me that I can use virtually anything now, that I don't have to go buy an exotic. Even though Rich is so kind to send me some crazy exotic wood, some also known as Mexican ebony. I'm reading up there on the list. So the concept of being able to stabilize something that was free, if you will, especially in these times, if you are already set up to stabilize. Now, would I encourage you to get set up in the stabilizing setup just to be able to do that? Well, I probably shouldn't, but then again, I'd be happy to sell you a vacuum chamber and a vacuum pump and stabilizing resin. But so it depends on, you know, how much you want to do this, how often you plan to do it, and look at your cost, you know, for buying fancy wood. This, I know, I think it was either Brian or I think it was Hans, and I don't know if Hans is in here right now or not. Hans had asked me about, and then he said he was joking, but this piece, especially this piece, could be used as an insert. So you've got some other wood, some maple, a big maple hollow form hanging around or whatever, and instead of using threaded brass rings, which are really cool, you could insert this piece in and have a thread. And you could do the same with this piece. You could just part this off as a ring, insert that ring into the other half. Okay? Just do it past the threads. Just use them as an insert. So you could make up the inserts to use in something completely different. I'm going to walk in front of the camera instead of changing it. And grab something here real quick. I thought I had, oh, here we go. So I also have the threaded brass rings here, right? And I'll pop this into the overhead. And Spydercraft carries these threaded brass rings from stainless steel bottle stoppers. Pop you into the overhead. So this threaded brass ring is set in as an insert, right? And then the female goes up into the lid. So in this case, you would hollow this section out, and you would insert this into your hollow form instead of a brass ring, and insert these threads, cut these threads off of this guy to make that piece. And I know I'm zoomed in really tight here, but you see what I'm saying? So that would be your two pieces. So that's how you can do this, and you could do it. You could buy exotic wood, or you could stabilize your own, or you could buy stainless steel, brass threaded rings, or make your own. So the sky's the limit. The cool thing is that regardless of what method you want to use, you can make threaded A's and B's. And once you get the threading part down, set this stuff down. Once you get the mechanics down, you can do it to anything and with anything. I'm watching the feed there, and it's late. So the sky's the limit. Once you get the mechanics down of making the components or turning the threads, you can put it into any project you want to. Joe says, Wyoming Woodturner on YouTube has some threading and threaded insert videos. Yeah, matter of fact, I watched them. I watched at least one of them just last week, Joe. So he's got them. He's got one, and guy out of Atlanta, I should remember his name now, I forget. He talked about them. The Allen Valley one that I saw, I think is quite good. I mean, it's old, but the fundamentals are really good and laid out well. The next thing that I would like to try is a project where taking regular taps and dies, machine taps and dies, which will work if the wood is good, and making a little teeny threaded piece, a little hole, you drill it and then just tap it, and then you thread with a regular machine tap for your, like say for your finial, and you can thread it in there just, because you can do it. So it's a pretty fun thing to do. The tool's not particularly expensive. They're like $100 or so, and I think I got them reduced right now. I think I have 116 and about 412s in stock. If you're interested in one of these, and I think they're like $94. And you just resharpen. I've been resharpening on the 600 side of a diamond card. Mike Mahoney just does it on a piece of, he says, medium grit sandpaper. Pick that for what it's worth. I would call that 220, 320, depending on what your concept of medium is. It's different for some people, obviously, than others. Again, it's important things to highlight to keep the tool rest really nice. Okay? And so I didn't go real far on all resin, but the process works just as well on resin, and it cuts a nice thread. So if you wanted to have, your hybrids or just thread resin pieces and chase threads, you can easily do it to a piece of resin. Makes a nice thread, and that one doesn't even have the peaks on it yet. This makes me really happy because that can take any kind of wood, stabilize it, and I love stabilized wood. It's kind of like the best of both worlds. You get grain, and you get the strength of resin. Matter of fact, just for fun, I want to throw a little lacquer on this. You guys know me. I'm going to move this one out of the way. Ah! I'll do it out here. I'll do it on this piece. I'm just curious to see what this maple with this violet on it looks like with some lacquer on it. A little out of focus there. Get her down in focus. Not too bad. Makes for some interesting. And you can even see here, because some of this was floating, it didn't get full stabilization. Now, over in the pot now, everything is submerged. I had it full right up to the hole. The gauge vent hole, the air holes on the side on mine, the glass vacs, and I had it literally full. I found a great tip. I found screens, a new way to hold my stuff down in there at, of course, the Dollar Tree. You screen for fry pans, but they have them without a handle. They have them with a little knob in the middle, and they're 10 inches. They go right inside the pot, and then you put your weight on there. I got my trusty chuck back in there now that I took these pieces out. So go to Dollar Tree and get you a screen, and they're 10 inches, and they drop right down in your vacuum chamber, and you put something, whatever your weight is, on top, and it holds all your stuff down, and it doesn't take up any weight. You don't have to cut the handles off. So I am 2:23, so I'm a little early today on the wrap-up. Any questions? Anybody want to see me do something different? I am wide open. That's pretty much what I had planned, was to show you the basics and then go through the process, and we have accomplished that. But I am open to anything. If somebody is so inclined that has a question or whatever. Otherwise, I'll go off to UPS and go find lunch and all that good stuff. I've had fun today. This thread chasing, again, it takes practice. It takes patience. It takes trial and error to find that speed, that marriage of tool cutting speed, keeping up with the threads as you're cutting the threads. Keep that in mind. The slower it is, the easier it is to do the dance. So think of it as a waltz as opposed to jumping around doing the hippie hippie shake. That's the most important thing that I can give you, is finding that rhythm and that cadence, whatever words you want to use, to move the tool at the appropriate feed rate for cutting the threads, and making sure that you have room for the tool to pass the end of the threads and not hit, because when it hits, it will tear all the threads right out. I think speed is the biggest thing. I think the biggest thing to think about is speed, slow way down. And like for me, at first, that was hard to slow down, because I like to turn things fast. I turn much faster when the camera's off than I do when it's on, as I like to just have things zooming right along. But it's a great addition to your arsenal of techniques and styles, and I think it's pretty cool. And I'm glad that I have entered into the world of hand threading now. Got a long way to go to be, just knocking them out. Again, like I say, I really enjoyed watching Alan Batty. Had been turning forever and ever, and he still had to adjust. He had to relieve his threads a little bit. So that tells me that that's just the nature of the process. It's hard to get them perfect on the first shot. So don't feel like if you're having to go back and adjust, you're doing it wrong. That's just the nature of the way it is. All right? Well, if we're good, then we will leave it at that. I thank you all for popping in today and hanging out with me. I had a great time. Sorry I missed last week. I plan to be here next week. I'm not sure what I'm up to yet. I might be using the new carbide beading cutters from Easy Wood Tools since they're coming today. So I might demonstrate those out here next week. Good chance of that, and I'll come up with some project to use them in, because I don't think I can spend an hour and a half or 2 hours just cutting with beaded cutters. But we'll make a project out of it. So I will say farewell, and I will look for, because I always get it wrong. I always think it's number 7 when it's number 6, and something like that. My intro, outro little video. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, message me, email, all the good things, anytime. Happy to help you with the questions. All righty. Thanks a lot.